Live now. We are live.
Hello.
Hello. Right, folk. Here live with, we've got it. Dr. Dave Tilley and myself. We've got and the entourage of people we've got behind the camera.
Squad.
We've had a few problems with the live link. I sent you a link maybe by email. Some of you that are watching. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but it doesn't matter because we are still live anyway. And
the show must go on.
The show must go on. So we're just in a different spot, but we're getting a few followers already, which is great. Thanks very much for joining. I'm here with Dave Tilley, as you can see, of Shift Movement Science. I'm in Boston, flew in last night. I've got a packed week here in Boston and Cincinnati, and then back to Boston again. So got lots going on.
Boston.
And
okay, I had some crisps this morning.
Yes, doing the usual exchange of commentaries and language barriers and things like that. So we've just filmed a podcast or recorded a podcast.
Got it, we're in.
We are going to do this Facebook Live now. We're going to be talking about happy, healthy, and hungry athletes. If you have any questions on those topics, so developing happy, healthy, or hungry athletes, now is the time to go for it. We're going to be here for the next, we're going to be available, I should say, for the next sort of 60 minutes. That doesn't mean that we're going to use all that time, but we're certainly available for it. So if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments. That goes to you guys on Instagram over there as well, and we'll be happy to answer them. But just to add a bit of a background, certainly for Dave's audience, Dave, I'm not sure if your audience know who I am.
Oh.
I'm not sure. So my name is Nick Ruddock. I'm clearly from England. I'm a gymnastics coach. I'm a consultant. I work with a number of organizations around the world. Predominantly now I work with federations. I've had the pleasure of working with 15 international gymnastics federations from Australia to Japan, France, Italy. I do a lot of work with Germany, Romania, and I'm a nomad. I don't really have a fixed address. I live on the road, a lot of airports.
I picked him up on the way here.
found me at the side of the road. And Dave and I, look, we're very aligned with our objectives. We're aligned with our vision and our values, aren't we? And we collaborate on a lot of projects, including events that we've done in the past, and including your presence at GymCon, which is my annual gymnastics conference, which is going to be this year in June. So we're doing a lot of collaborative work because we believe that we've got a message for people, a message that needs to be heard.
Absolutely.
And so we use our platforms, our online content as vehicles to get that message across. And this Facebook Live is part of that as well. So I've just got a few people that I want to say hi to. Emma Suckling, hi. Richard is behind the camera. Tracy Whitaker-Smith is with us. She's the head national coach of the trampolining team for British Gymnastics. She is awesome. It's the best word for Tracy. So nice to see that you've joined us. BG is from Germany. She's one of the personal coaches that I work with in BG there. Martine is working with the French national team. She's just joined us. We've got a lot of high-level coaches on here, so thank you very much for joining. Look, let's get into the questions because I know that I've got 25 odd people watching from my stream, and I'm sure you've got a bunch of yours. How many questions have you got, dude?
Got two. Oh boy. Whoa.
Before we get into the questions, can you just do me a favor, guys? Can you just hit the share button, please? So we just get that message spread out to an even wider community. That would be really, really helpful. So if you can share the stream, we'll be most grateful. Let's go with your first question there from Fabian.
Yes, Fabian Moser. I'm sorry if I don't produce your name the right way. Pronounced. So his question is, I'm going to sift through it. It's a little long. It says, my question I would like answered would be, gymnastics often gets criticized because it traditionally requires specialization in the sport from a very young age, especially when pursuing competitive gymnastics. He talks about how he comments with parents about how this might not be the best thing from a very young age because of the fear of long-term overuse, injury, and burnout. His question is, what are your thoughts on diversifying the sports a young gymnast is doing to get them out of the gym and doing some cross-training that can help them in gymnastics but not take away from the progression in the sport? And it's how do you have coaches buy in to spend less time on actual skills in the gym and more time about being well-rounded in the early years to prevent overuse?
That's a big question.
That is a monster question, but that is a super important question.
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Well, this is a question. Early specialization comes up so often. I think the challenge that we've got is the requirements for the sport are so extreme if you want to reach high performance. And so what people are doing is they're cramming in as many hours as they can as they're training as early as possible, which of course has benefits. It does accelerate skill development. It does give you more time to work on things. So it's easy to get stuck into that trap.
Sure.
what I think is important now is that as gymnastics is changing, and what I mean by that is there's a few things happening. One, the average age of athletes is actually increasing now, which is awesome. Positive. Yeah. That's really, really important. The equipment is changing also. Some of that is obviously happening very positively, but we know that some of that is having a negative impact. That's not the equipment's fault.
Yeah.
That's the important thing there. And we've got this open-ended code. So what we're seeing now is athletes when they're 20s, mid-20s, even late 20s, not only competing, but actually rivaling for medals, which is fantastic. Yeah. So I think what we've got to do is get the balance right between making sure the athlete is doing enough work to not miss that window of opportunity of neuroplasticity, making sure when they're young, the body is obviously in a much better state to improve flexibility. I mean, this is your area more than mine, but flexibility is easier to gain at a younger age. So is I talked about neuroplasticity there, the way that the brain works.
Yeah.
It's easy to influence that when the athlete is young. You know, they're just soaking up information. So we've got to get that balance between getting that bit right, using that window of opportunity to our advantage, but not rushing so fast that actually your gymnast doesn't reach that final destination. And it's really important. One of the golden rules that I preach about a lot, I'm going to be talking about this at GymCon this year. One of the golden rules of coaching is your athlete has got to be there on the day in order to win a medal in the first place.
Yeah.
If they're not in the competition because they're injured, that's it. That's game over. The number one rule of a competitive sport, to be a competitive athlete, you've got to be at the competition.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're killing the kids off with hardcore training, like too hard when they're 9 and 10 years old, and they fail to even perform at the event when they're 15, I would say that model is completely wrong.
Yeah.
We've got to be thinking about long-term potential. Now, Fabian's question there is obviously talking about what's right, how much is right, or should they dabble into other sports?
How do you get? Should you dabble in other sports or cross training, and how do you get coach-parent buy-in?
Well, I think you do whatever you need to do to make sure that your athlete fulfills their potential, because every athlete's going to be a bit different. Now, if that means that this particular athlete doesn't need to be spending time doing other sports because that's going to hinder their chance of a more rounded development, okay, then that's fine. But if you feel that you can fill in the gaps with other parts of preparation, whether it's you want to take your athlete on a climbing wall because it's actually going to build up their upper body strength and they hate doing physical preparation, but maybe they're going to do a bit of climbing. Maybe as part of your team culture at your gym, you want to do some team sports to get them interacting and working together. I would say they're massively important and great vehicles to help those things. So I would use them to fill in the gaps. I do a lot of that, like in terms of like just play games, set up a basketball gym in your gym perhaps, and let them do that. But it's doing whatever's necessary to serve the purpose of helping them to reach their potential. So that's my thoughts, Fabian.
I would agree. I would think. I agree with everything you said, and I think I always try to think about what is the available literature on these concepts, right? Because this has been studied extensively in other sports, including gymnastics on a global macro level. And I think that the literature is pretty clear that there's a correlation between single sport specialization from an early age. And I think there's single sport specialization and year-round training. Yeah. There's definitely a correlation between those two things and overuse injury from repetitive movement patterns. And there's also a correlation to that within burnout risk. So those two things are definitely correlated to a higher chance, not automatically, but a higher chance that you're going to have problems down the road, right? And then a more recent argument has been that people that you look at the professional level of baseball, NBA, NHL, Olympic level sports, when you reverse, analyze the data, many of them did multi-sports when they were younger first before specializing, say, after the age of 11 when puberty happened and things like that. Yeah. So when you look at the data compared to massively more injuries in one sport year-round, and when you look at the burnout rate, and when you look at the potential that maybe you don't need to be doing only one sport from 5 to 20 to make it to that level, it's very convincing from the literature that maybe an adoption of a different thought process is needed. That's what the literature says. Beyond that, speaking from personally, I think that allowing athletes to do more than one sport when they're younger, or cross-training, or doing more than just one sport skill, makes them substantially more well-rounded, and I think it gives you a bigger opportunity window to then harness that and funnel it into gymnastics or funnel it into baseball. So personally for me, I think that like 8, 9, 10, I think it's very realistic and honest for someone to do more than one sport. I think that somebody who is only doing gymnastics from the age of 5 for 5 years to 11, 12 is you're gonna have a really tough time keeping them healthy. You're gonna have a really tough time keeping them focused and not through the monotony of training. And so I believe in that personally as a philosophy. You know, I don't coach Olympians and elite level athletes, so I don't know if like that's the best method for that course of action, but I know a lot of high level athletes who did a lot of other sports when they're younger. In terms of over injury rate, I can definitely tell you that someone who does the same sport all year round is way more prone to injury. It's just repetitive pattern, right? So a baseball player who throws all year long and only does baseball is probably going to get an elevated injury risk of soreness, right? And things like that in their elbow or UCL tears. I think that gymnasts who only do gymnastics all year round have a very high risk of overuse, hyperextension injury, or landing impact injuries, despite the best coaching program in the entire world. Like the forces recorded at the ankle joint in gymnasts and some heavy landings are 23 times body weight. That's crazy. 23 times, that's relative to your body, right? Whether you weigh 80 pounds or 120 pounds. The forces on knees have been 15 times body weight, the wrists, ankles, 2 to 4 times body weight, and handstand weight bearing on joints that aren't built for walking. So I think that I agree with what you said, that one, it can be much more fun to do a variety of other sports, whether you're formally doing something else or whether you're just playing, you know, basketball or kickball, or you're having some fun cardio, something like that. I think it's super important. I think the best chance of success is maybe if gymnastics looks more at a much, I want to say definitely a smaller off piece after a competitive season. Like you need a couple weeks off to a month of just like very deloaded training, right? Doesn't mean you have to sit on the couch and, you know, eat crisps all day long, but it does mean that you have to do something that is
to teach him crisps, not potato chips.
I think athletes, and we're seeing because the sport is so hard, that it's just so much cumulative trauma over an 8-month cycle that you need to rest. I do also believe in cross training and mixed modality training for athletes. I've had some very high level coaches ask me if gymnasts could maybe be more prepared and be more robust and fitter if they did a mix of resistance training or a mix of swimming or a mix of some other global sports. And I think it's true. I do.
So my thought is that I think a lot of coaches shy away from this for probably 2 or 3 reasons. One, lack of control. They don't know what their athlete is doing when they go to another sport. So they hate the lack of control because we all know that as coaches, we love to have control. Number 2 would be maybe scared that athlete will either be better at that sport or enjoy that sport more, and therefore they don't want them to do that because they'll leave. You know, so let's say they went and participated in is netball thing in America? Handball, swimming. Let's go with swimming. Okay, that they love swimming so much and they're actually really good at it because let's be honest, most gymnasts are very good at many other sports because they're physical qualities, and so then they're going to want to go and do that. So that's obviously a challenge. Another thing will be probably, and this is a valid point, recovery time. But what we're not talking about necessarily is doing another sport in addition to gymnastics. You're talking about maybe substituting an hour of gyms to an hour of something else. Another benefit, I think, I'm not sure we fully mentioned it, is the different stimuli that sport is given. So you mentioned the increased risk of injury when an athlete does one sport
all year round,
over and over again. But also the body switches off to the same type of training from a physical adaptation perspective. So when you're providing a different stimulus, it's actually providing another opportunity to develop as well. So that's a very valid point. Can I just say hi? Amy Tinkler's joined us on the stream, so that's very, very cool.
I don't know you, but hello.
Hi, Tink.
That is one of the most daunting questions that gymnastics faces. And we've talked about fear of the unknown, what's going to happen. I personally believe that the future of gymnastics will have less competitions per year, and I think it will have a much more periodized rotational aspect to seasons, right? I think there's going to be a much more structured block of like competitive season followed by an off season, followed by a summer training, followed by a preseason. And I think that we're going to see a huge change in the amount that happens. And we're also going to see, because of the reality of that, like the injury rate is unreal right now. Unreal. The amount of people that are quitting gymnastics because they're burnt out is crazy. And the amount of people that, despite their best efforts, don't see the performance gains they make is so high that I think people are going to start investigating, like maybe we need to start saying, okay, we're going to push all these really hard skills off until you're through puberty, and you can train them on tramp and on tumble track and do the air awareness stuff and do all the physical prep. But if you don't do a few years of really hard leg conditioning to prepare them for the 15 to 20 degree force, that comes through a landing, situation, we're going to see these athletes just fall apart before they ever reach anywhere close to their full potential. And this is what I see on the medical end of treating people.
Yeah.
Is I see the end product of like, I pushed and I pushed and I tried and I went to the doctor and I pushed and I tried and I tried, and then now I have a stress fracture. Now I have OCD in my elbow. Now I have, an Achilles tear at a college gym or something like that. And that's the end product of maybe we need to have a better conversation about year-round training, how much we're doing in mixed modality training, investigating a newer strength paradigm with some resistance training, with expert opinion of the coaches at the highest level who have valid input here. So, yeah. All right. That was an epic question. Very good question.
We've got Sophie Joyce is joining us. She's loving this.
Ah, nice.
Thanks, Soph. Thanks for joining. Guys, if you are here, drop in a question. There's a number of you watching. Feel free. You can ask any question. We're talking about happy, healthy, and hungry athletes here. Okay, so please just drop one in if you have a question. Have you got anyone there?
Yeah, I got a couple more.
And you had someone that wanted to join you. Maybe she wanted to ask a question live.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't know what that was. I'm not going to lie.
Click on.
I had no clue what that was.
She disappeared. There she is.
That one?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Let's give it a go.
I have no idea what
she's got to accept that.
Okay.
We think we've got a live thing happening.
Somebody asked where my hair went. I buzzed it off.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, we go?
Here we go.
Is this it? Whoa.
I'm not sure what that is.
Whoa.
What is that?
What's...
Someone could be a part of your stream.
Yeah, we've done it, but we can't see.
I feel like I'm watching a horror movie.
It does look a bit odd. All right, I think get rid of that.
All right.
Sorry.
For all those
for that. Okay,
watching,
let's go back and find.
I buzzed my head. Somebody asked, where did my hair go? I buzzed my head to save time, honestly, in my day and not deal with my hair anymore. So here
the real reason is Dave wants to be more aerodynamic.
No, I want to be
spotting in the gym.
I want to be more like Nick. That was what I was going for. Thank goodness that Nick shaved his beard because we would have literally looked exactly the same.
5 o'clock
but
shadow.
I was tired of my hair, so I buzzed it off.
All right, let's get some more questions because otherwise people are going to go and eat their dinner.
All right, so I had one up here. Okay, what could be done in practice with bands for such light prehab? For some light prehab. Okay, so I guess this is very common in the men's gymnastics scene, is guys who are doing TheraBand or elastic band tubing shoulder warm-ups. There's a lot of people who do rotator cuff warm-ups, they do stuff like that. And I think that with light bands, I think that it's definitely a very good warm-up, right? So the reason people are doing that is because of how much gymnastics demands of your rotator cuff, your shoulders, your scap muscles, and it's just like we would warm up for any other day. We would want to, specifically warm up maybe our hips and our shoulders, the smaller hip stabilizers. So I'll say that I do think that light bands, you could do very light very light internal external rotations at 0 degrees. At 90 degrees, you could do some standing Ys, some standing Ts. Those are very good, supported in research EMG-wise, fine wire EMG to support activation of those muscles.
Sorry, can I interrupt? If this is gibberish to some of you, it's also to me. So don't panic if you're listening to things.
I'm going to change it. I'll change my answer.
It's a great answer.
Oh.
There'll be a portion of the audience here that understand everything that you say.
Oh, yeah.
You lost me at EMG. That's it. I was
EMG, sorry, my fault.
Just
EMG is electromyography. It's the way that you measure how much a muscle is turning on. So if I maximally contract the muscle, and then I would do an experiment to see if does this exercise activate it as much as it's high, like what percentage of maximal activation.
Okay. So is that because sometimes we think something's helping, but it's really actually not?
Correct.
I think we do a lot of that in gymnastics. I'm going to be totally honest. I think sometimes we think that what we're doing is actually very, very helpful, but the science behind it, Instagram, they're over there.
Hello.
The science behind it, and this is Mr. Science of Gymnastics, sometimes actually tells a different story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, carry on with your answer.
Yeah, so I guess that light bands have been shown to kind of wake those muscles up, I guess is the best way to put it. In terms of true injury prevention, I think that they're probably not going to do what people think they are. So injury prevention, this is across multiple studies, across large sports. Yeah. One of the biggest things that actually does happen with injury prevention is physical preparation strength programs, right? There's a lot of other things have been studied, balance, flexibility, all these things. And strength training and proper physical preparation continues to be the biggest predictor of injury prevention. Yeah. And it makes sense when you think about it. High force in sport, not physically prepared, there's a gap there, I might break down tissue. So I think that bands help warm somebody up. However, formal strength programs that use dumbbells maybe to do some exercises related to, some baseball research, some other very good rehab research has shown that certain exercises with dumbbells at the right dosage and volume and intensity can hypertrophy those muscles that are smaller stabilizers. And there's a misconception in the medical world and across all of gymnastics that because these muscles are small, they just need lightweight, but you need to grow that muscle and elicit hypertrophy or make it stronger in the same way so it can take more force. Yeah. And so take a a ginger, for an example, right? You catch a ginger pretty low. There's a huge amount of traction force in your shoulders. Those muscles need to be extremely strong to help stabilize your shoulder. And I think that that's where people have to have two different buckets. We have maybe do a band warm up for guy gymnasts before meet or training, but we have to make sure 2 times per week, maybe even more, we're doing some like hypertrophy based shoulder work, if that makes sense. That's like not just pull-ups, rope climbs, leg lifts, push-ups. It's like smaller muscles that get equal as much attention.
Okay. Because it's often the smaller muscles that are ones that actually are making the difference.
Yeah, especially when you're swinging. Like
yes, and I think an important point for me, I view physical preparation as filling in the gaps for what technical work doesn't do as well. Yeah. So things like, I mean, you mentioned there chin-ups and pull-ups. Well, when you're training and you're doing all those caster handstands, like you've almost got that covered. But what you haven't got covered is doing the work on the stabilizers, because those dominant muscles are always coming into play, aren't they, while you're training? But the smaller ones aren't necessarily, and that's why I think physical preparation has got to be so holistic and so global to fill in all those little gaps.
And there's another piece too that I think correlates to the sport specificity kind we're seeing. Every sport, when you do it enough, has a natural adaptation, right? And that's been well shown in my mentor's research with professional baseball. If you throw a baseball for a while, you might lose some range of motion, right? And runners, if you run a lot, your calves might get stiff. And I think that in gymnastics, this has yet to be investigated. However, the more you swing bars, you tend to get stiffer lats and pecs, right, from overuse. The more you squeeze your legs together for good form, your inner thighs, your quads, and your calves are going to get, you're pointing your toes for 8 hours a day probably, right? So the reverse, right? But the opposite motions sometimes become very limited, right? So if I'm very stiff in my ankles, I might lose ankle mobility the other way to squat. If my shoulders are very stiff in here, I might lose my overhead flexibility over time. And I think that people are doing a lot of mobility work and soft tissue work, but what they're not doing is maintaining balance around their strength programs, right? So the chest and the lats become extremely strong and stiff. Good for gymnastics. We want strong, Corbett, right? Corbett ability, I learned that.
Snap action.
Right, to snap on bars, things like that. However, that requires flexibility, but it also requires an insane amount of strength in your upper back and your scap and your rotator cuff to maintain overhead angles that take force this way. So I think physical preparation fills in the gaps, especially to have a well-balanced athlete that tips towards specificity, if that makes sense, right? And one of the most famous examples, like Usain Bolt has one of the most asymmetrical leg races of all time, but I'm probably not going to fix that if I'm his healthcare provider, because that's what wins him a gold medal, right? If a gymnast is super stiff overhead, I want to make sure they have a full angle, but maybe they need some of that power, like that stiffness in their Achilles tendon is why there's such a big tumbler. So it's this balance of balance meets sport specificity, but largely in gymnastics, I think we're way on the side of sport specificity and overuse-based injuries because we don't manage that balance.
We've got lots of people on my feed here.
Smash right now. This is good.
They're agreeing basically what we're saying. The concept of happy, healthy, hungry athletes being absolutely critical. So that's good. People are resonating with the message that we've got here. Just to interrupt quickly, we've got loads of time. We're going to carry on. So please keep adding questions if you've got questions, and we're going to get round to those. But I just want to mention again, GymCon, because if you're not attending GymCon or if you don't know about GymCon, let me just drop something in here. It's a little link for you to check after. Okay, GymCon is my annual conference. It's an international event that we run in the UK. Dave Tilley is going to be joining me on stage for GymCon for a great session, talking about the theme of happy, healthy, hungry athletes. But we're also joined by Miss Val, Niall Wilson.
Can't wait for Miss Val.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very good day. So I'm going to drop the link in, which is simply gymcon.co.uk. I'm going to check that out if you haven't already.
What did you say? We got 20 countries represented?
In present, we'll probably have somewhere like 15 by the time that the event comes.
Bonkers.
Yeah. So we've got people coming from Australia, Hong Kong, Italy, Germany, all over the world for the event. It's a fantastic day. Check it out. I've dropped it in there, the link. There you go, Katie Foster.
I think I'm more excited for Miss Val's talk than my own.
Beyond excited about seeing Miss Val at GymCon. Katie, so are we. She epitomizes happy, healthy, hungry athletes, and she's a fantastic job in working with high level athletes still. So we're really looking forward to welcoming her to the event. I'm going to pin that to the top so people can have a look. Right, do you want to get around to the next question?
Okay, so I have, so just a follow-up, Armando said, what's more important, strength or proprioception for injury prevention? I think it's both. I think we can't say that one is more than the other. You need, along with muscles being strong, they need to often work together to help prevent injuries. That's dynamic stability flexibility is the term thrown around. Proprioception has to do with that, so I don't want to get complex. But I think like single leg balance work for ankles are just extremely important for gymnasts because of the ankle rolling injury rate is insane. That comes with ankle flexibility and some other things. But I don't want to say that one is more important than the other. I want to say that the literature represents strength and physical preparation just a little bit more. Right? Proprioception was indicative in a huge systematic review to help a little bit, but not at a significant effect as strength conditioning. So I would say both, but I wouldn't say that it's like clear cut.
Yeah.
You have any? I have one over here.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we have 51 Chappie says, is there a place for traditional resistance training in gymnastics, squatting, deadlifting, and so on? Dun, dun, dun. I want to hear your answer first.
I've got a great answer. Dave, my answer is that Dave's the expert on this. So,
okay, this is super controversial in.
It's not.
I would think it's super resistant.
No. Hang on. Let me. Is there a place for traditional resistance? Right. There's resistance
training. Yeah.
But there's no controversy in terms of the science behind it, whether it is. It undoubtedly is beneficial for gymnastics, but there is resistance because it's fear of the unknown. Yeah. But it's not unknown to you. So go for it.
So I guess the basic question is like, gymnasts lift weights, right? Like, should gymnasts be involved in weightlifting and using barbells, kettlebells, all that kind of stuff? And I want to start the conversation with what the literature says about it and what it says about the myths or misunderstandings about it, right? So number one is that across all sports, every age level, resistance training in the form of appropriate load with supervision and the right programming, right technique is extremely beneficial for injury prevention and for performance. It's been correlated to a reduction in injury risk by, I think, 1/3 in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. The American Journal of Sports Medicine. No. But I think that's been shown across a lot of sports, and youth athletes especially. It also has been correlated to running speed, jumping height, right? Obviously, we're not jumping off of a ground, but the spring floor mechanism. So the literature is clear-cut on the effectiveness or indicates very highly the effectiveness for injury prevention and the effectiveness for sports performance, right? And the literature is also very clear on how to go about that in terms of hypertrophy, volume, intensity, duration, strength and conditioning principles that are extremely standard in many other sports. So whether it matters for gymnastics has a few caveats. So I'm going to start blatantly by saying I think it does. I think that the future of gymnastics, sports medicine, and rehabilitation and strength conditioning will start to blend traditional body weight exercises with non-traditional, more general physical preparation, preparedness of light, appropriately loaded weightlifting and kettlebell, dumbbell, that kind of stuff. Now, the reason people don't want to try, right, is because they don't have a good education source to what to do, and it's overwhelming. I totally get that. But there's 3 myths: that it's going to make them be bulky, that it's going to make them get hurt, and then it's going to make them lose their flexibility. Right? Those are the 3 consistently across 5 years. It's always what I hear, right? So on the terms of bulky, there's a lot of research that says that there's so many factors in terms of volume, nutrition, how much you lift that go into that. People hear weightlifting and picture bicep curls with weights, or powerlifters doing insane back squats, and that's not at all what happens, right? The science of strength conditioning has so many different ways you can program for exercises and volume and intensity and bias it towards explosive power and speed that makes it so the risk of hypertrophy to a degree that affects gymnastics performance is probably minimal, right? And what that requires is working with a knowledgeable strength coach who understands that scientific base of information, right? You have to understand about nutrition and recovery and how much load you're using. You have to really understand that fully, but that can largely be prevented if you have appropriate knowledge, right? And then we just talked about injuries, right? The reason injuries happen at the most basic foundational level is because the force of gymnastics or sports are here and the physical preparation is lower. So either an acute injury, blow your ACL out, or accumulative over time, the force being higher than what you can handle causes injury, right? It doesn't matter what joint, what body part you're talking about, freak accidents happen, but it's still overload, right? And physical preparation with resistance training works to take a portion of that and overload the body very slowly and systematically, right? To slowly try to increase it. That has to be done with rope climbs, cast handstands, shaving drills, technical gymnastics aspects that are super important, right? But it also basic squatting, basic deadlifting, some light work of a vest, and use of dumbbell or kettlebells has an unbelievable amount of benefit that can occur if it's done with the right approach, right?
So the first thing that you mentioned at the start of this was there's a lot of resistance because people don't know much about it.
Yeah.
What's your advice to the coach that doesn't know much about it, but they do agree that it would be great if they did implement it? What would you suggest that they do?
You have to find a professional, a strength conditioning professional who is knowledgeable about their craft and is humble and open enough to apply it to gymnastics the right way.
Okay.
I think that is number one. Is not maybe a mentor is a good, but a collaboration. There's a lot of strength coaches that maybe don't understand gymnastics and are going to fluff it and are going to kind of fake it and try to put you in a box of lifting more and heavier and faster and going. But I don't think that's appropriate in all of its degrees. There's a lot of exercises I don't use with athletes for resistance training. There is a lot that I do, and there's a lot of every college program in the U.S. to some degree has resistance training built into their physical prep program, especially in the off season. And I think you need to find someone who understands what gymnastics needs and what can be used well, right? So I think that that's the biggest thing is that it's collaborative, it's interdisciplinary, and it's based on the season, right? We do some resistance training as half of our prep program in the summer, but as preseason comes, we phase that out throughout the whole year. That's what a lot of college programs do. That's what a lot of higher level JO programs do is the summer months use a lot of that kind of approach, and then it weans its way back to all gymnastics specific down the road. So injury prevention wise, I think that the other caveat with that is that people are scared about using it in kids that have open growth plates, prepubescent and things of that nature.
And they're all valid concerns, aren't they, without knowing?
No, for sure. Absolutely. I think that, again, when you look at the literature, when you talk to strength conditioning coaches, if it is properly supervised with the right loading, the right technique, and you're using exercises that are appropriate, right, like very moderate weights with correct technique, all of the concerns, and this has been put out by a position statement in the United Kingdom, in America, and a couple other places, that it's the risk is super low of injury. All the injuries reported are typically accidents or safety, like supervision issues, right? So, or form issues, technical issues, and loading issues. So if it happens in the right light, it can be done with young athletes, older athletes, all of the younger athletes that we do a little bit of resistance training with. If you don't show absolutely perfect form, then you're not getting a weight ever, right? So it's the same thing with, if you can't show me a basic back tuck shape and land the right way, why in the world are we going to have you do this off the block or have you do this in helmet pass? So those are the things I talk about. Bulky.
It's the right load at the right time with the right athletes, the right circumstances.
And flexibility wise has actually been shown to be contrary. I'm not going to go into the competition of flexibility and training, but muscles probably are not getting longer when we stretch. They don't shorten up when we resistance train. It's not like this like crossover effect where it's like longer, shorter. There's a lot of neurological effects for perception of stress, and eccentric training, properly done deadlifting, properly done eccentric chin-ups have been shown to increase muscle length and increase flexibility in a lot of reviews. So those three myths are broken. Those three myths are typically combated with education and, again, like you said, the right load and all this kind of stuff. Fantastic question.
I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily posing to Dave's camera. I'm just checking the comments. That was a good answer.
That was epic.
We have got, can I just shout out to Guti Probst. Now, Guti is actually a mentor of mine. Hi, Guti. Guti is coach, she's at Stuttgart. She's one of the head coaches at Stuttgart, obviously in Germany. She works with Elizabeth Sykes, Kim Bui, Tabea Alt, numerous international girls that have come out of that gym. Emmy Petz, who we've just talked about before with the Yuchenko Vault, and wanted to say hi. Thanks for joining us, Guti. Guys, if anyone's got questions, please put your questions in the feed right now. We've got a couple more on Dave's feed. There's a lot of you watching. Also, just say where you are in the world. Cool. I recognise a lot of the names that are watching, but not everyone knows who everybody is. So please just drop in where you're watching from. We've certainly got at least 10 countries here, which is great to see. Also, it would be nice of you to share, please, the feed as well. Help us spread this message a little bit further. We're doing this for the right reasons. We're trying to improve the healthiness, the happiness, and the hungriness of our athletes. If we can do that together, that's going to serve everybody. So sharing this video would be really helpful for you, and it will be helpful for us as well. So Richard Dwyer just said he's in the USA. Normally, he's not. He's in England, but he's with us at the moment.
I'm having an inception moment.
Yeah.
I see you.
Tara Duncanson is...
Justin, my man Justin just submitted the question. One of my buddies used to work here around this area in Boston. Now he owns his own gym in St. Louis, maybe? Good guy. Phenomenal gymnastics coach. She's got a good question, I think.
Can I just shout out quickly to Emma Bailey, big GB fan. Good old GB, shared my gym group. Thank you very much, Emma. I appreciate that. Katie Foster, GB. Michaela Matthews from Australia. This is cool. Got lots of people.
Yes, right, go worldwide.
It's with Justin.
Okay. So let's see. Justin says, how do you approach the idea that the movements you use as a level 10 should be broken down and started in the lowest level and then built up in a linear pattern? Do you feel that too much time is spent on haphazard programming and guessing instead of basic, simple patterns of the movement that build up over time? I'm going to let you start with this one. So essentially he's asking...
I was reading the comments.
Yeah, it's okay. Essentially he's asking, how do you approach, like, okay, my end goal of level 10 skills or elite skills in 5 years, should you spend too much time on the basics, or should you approach that in a linear program of trying to increase over time to that level 10 skill? Or is it like, okay, I'll work, I think this is his question. It's like, do I work on these skills? When they get that, I work to the next one. When I get this one, I work to the next one. It's like, I know you want to do it to Kachev in 2 years. We're going to try to start and work.
This is a really good question. You can't do too many basics, really,
Very well put.
right? Basics are only an investment of time. Only ever an investment of time, because they will always serve the athlete. It's what you do with those basics which actually is the tricky thing. So if you've got an athlete with excellent baseline basics, then you're opening doors to them to be able to do anything that they need to in the sport. So I think that's the first thing that we need to understand. Any time spent on basics is never a poor use of time. Okay, so what you do with them. In response to your question, I think there's a few things that we've got to consider. Skill development is sequential, okay, which means that there are layers to every single skill that needs to be learned. And I talk about a pyramid. If you follow my new vlog, which is going to be up in about a week's time, there's a whole section on it, which is about, if you find my YouTube channel, which is Nick Ruddock, then please, subscribe to that, and you're going to see that video next week. It's going to go into a bit more detail, but essentially it's 5 layers to a pyramid, which all athletes should follow. The first level is physical preparation, which we're talking about here. The next level is technical preparation. That's essentially drills and breakdowns. The third level is practice. So once you've done all of the drills, you've got to, at some point, put it all together and practice the skill. And then the final 2 layers are consolidation and then adaptation. I'm going to go into more detail on that in the pyramid, but the important thing is that it is a sequential process. Okay. Now, if you're thinking about a skill that you need to learn in 5 years' time, like you want it in 5 years' time, that process of teaching the skills already begun, because everything you do when you're in the gym affects every other skill that you learn. So if your handstand's not very good, then it's going to affect the Kachev. If your handstand's not good, it's going to hinder your Yurchenko vault. So actually, the moment a 7-year-old walks into the gym, they're already starting the process of learning a double twist in Yurchenko. That's something that coaches often forget. Everything accumulates to that end result. Al Fong, and those of you in the US will know very well Al. In fact, he's just become a little bit more active, I should say, on social media. Al Fong, a great mentor of mine, taught me the power of drip feeding. And drip feeding is the process of teaching skills in tiny little chunks over a very long period of time. So he does that using the trampoline, and he'll start kids on, let's say, a Kachev, as he would call it. We just say Kachev in the UK because it's quicker, actually. Okay, a Kachev, not a Tkachev. But a Kachev, you could start drills for a Kachev technically with an 8-year-old.
Back me up here.
You could start that with an 8-year-old in terms of the drills, because you can start on trampoline doing like the back bounces and the back bounces to an extension position. So you're actually beginning the process of teaching that very, very early. So by the time you actually come around to doing the main chunk of the work, oh no, I've gone off. This isn't good.
That's unfortunate.
My internet is, I don't know if my internet's still up.
I think you're good.
Okay, I'm back on. The process of teaching that skill starts so early that the time that they actually do the chunk of the work on the Kachev, they've actually done like 8 years of drip-fed process. So where you're spreading your time, it should be, okay, you've got a portion of basics, let's say that's 30%. You've then got the chunk of, the main work, that might be 50%. And then the remaining 20% of your time, you're working on tomorrow's skills, but today. So you're drip feeding little things. It's the big stuff. It's the release and catches. It's the big acrobatic elements. It could be learning how to twist off your hands for vault, but not necessarily using the vault. Okay. So does this answer the question that we had in?
I think so.
Let's read it one more time. I'm hoping that helps.
How do you approach the idea of movements you should use at level 10?
Linear pattern. Do you feel
too much time is spent haphazard programming and guessing
instead of basic, simple patterns of movement? Yeah, I mean, look, we would want everything to be linear, but the reality is nothing in gymnastics is linear. Yeah, it's undulating. It's up and down. I learned that word this week. Undulating. It's a nice word. Is it? Okay, so linear, bam, is you start at point A, and the quickest way to get from point A to point B is in a straight line. We would expect that to be, or we would like that to be very typical for gymnastics, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is you're going to have injuries on the way. You're going to have growth spurts. You've got puberty. You might have some mental fears, maybe, like these things
Hit the bar one time.
Hit the bar one time. It's just the reality of coaching. So I think, it's normal to go through this process. But what you do when you build with the pyramid model, which is good physical prep, good technical prep, lots of practice before they consolidate, you can move up and down those layers whenever you want. So if you get an injury at the practice stage, what do? You go back down to the physical prep stage, you re-practice, you move up to the technical stage. Now, the opposite to the pyramid model is actually the Jenga model. Jenga's international, right?
Yeah,
the
we have a
building
life-size Jenga and champion.
Brilliant. I look forward to seeing that tomorrow. I'm going to do a video on that tomorrow. Okay, so when you have a Jenga model and you start stacking up, now the higher you stack up, the more unstable it becomes because you haven't got the base of physical preparation underneath to support it. Okay, right, let's move on to the next question. We've got one from Samantha Pritchard just saying how she's got a weights strength coach.
Kind of answered this one about prepubescent 6 to 8 year olds with lifting and stuff.
You struggle with that word,
don't you? Tough. Prepubescent. Okay, so we got a medical one in the middle here. So it says, what would your general criteria be for a gymnast to return to sport following a lumbar spine injury? Always depending on the athlete, but what are the general range of motion, strength, functional measures you are strict on? Oh man, that is a good question. So return to sport after a back injury, spine, so maybe a stress fracture, spondylolisthesis, got that one. Or there's various other spinal injuries, right? You can have male gymnasts tend to get a lot more forward bending compression injuries because of like jams or talks or things like that.
Jams is squat disla.
Yep, sorry. And landing.
Would you say jams?
Talk half, jam half.
I don't know what that is.
Like
tuck half, squat half.
Talk half.
Squat half, yeah.
Squat
disla. Sure, yeah.
Squat on's like on vault. Anyways.
I used to do a squat on vault.
These Brits, bro.
Carry on.
So guys tend to get more flexion-based injuries, and also because guys tend to land in a flex position when they land. So there's a really interesting studies show that when you land in a flex position in gymnastics, the loading forces through the middle part of your spine are like exponential because you then shift away from the hips, and that forward bending momentum causes you to have a lot more lower back injury. So guys more on the flexion, they do get backwards bending kind of stuff. Girls typically get more hyperextension based injuries into your tilt pelvic position, and they do way more skills. Yeah, Yurchenko, handspring, layout, step out, sheep, all that kind of stuff. When you have someone who has injury, the first thing you have to realize is that there is going to be a long time frame where they are not able to do gymnastics. They're probably going to be braced if they have a full stress fracture and a hard rigid cell brace. It's going to take 3 months to stabilize the fracture. There's tons of stuff you can do. Shoulders, you can screen their shoulders to see if they have the adequate flexibility. You can screen their hips to see if they have adequate flexibility. You can check to see if they're equally as strong in the front and underneath, as we alluded to earlier, compared to their upper back, their hips, groin, and quads compared to their glutes. You can do a lot of stuff for that. However, it's still going to take probably 3 months for the fracture to heal, right? You have definitely pushed past the point of normal timeline of healing. It's going to take a while. And so just kind of, you got to chew on that first. That's tough for an athlete to be like, I'm missing a quarter of my season and then probably 2 months more of return to sport progression. So given she's asking about like strength measurements and things like that. So range of motion at a basic level is the first thing that we look for. Do you have on your back passively 170-ish degrees of shoulder elevation?
Pain-free shoulder elevation.
Pain-free, correct, yeah. And do you have hip mobility? Right.
Rich is checking his out over there. That was about 130.
Yeah. Do you have the hip mobility to extend your hips and not cheat with your lower back? Yeah. So there's medical tests called a Faber test, a Thomas test. I'm not going to go into, but they essentially, do you have the adequate hip mobility to not allow your back to bend? Because typically, if you run out of hip flexibility, you will then kink in your lower back at L5, S1, which is what the most common stress fracture site is. So we do those things first. Range of motion. You have strength, balance, upper and lower with certain muscle testing and some other handheld testing. If you have those, the next is can you function as a human pain-free? Can you bend forward, bend backwards, turn side to side, squat, jump, sprint, land? Can you do the basic
being athletic?
Yes. Yeah. Can you like roll out of bed and just be a human and not have back pain? And that usually comes around the 4-month mark with the bracing, proper PT, and the slow return to formal strength conditioning principles. 4 to 6 months usually, depending on the severity. So those things are second, right? Do you have basic range of motion? You have the basic movement patterns, and then can you tolerate force? And from there, it's really a little bit more of an art form to be like, what gymnastics functional screens can you do? I think that you have to be able to do a weight-bearing handstand. You have to be able to hang and swing a little bit pain-free before you start loading. You have to be able to use your hip and shoulder flexibility. And I usually just put people through a normal progression of like, all right, show me a tumble track back handspring. Show me a low load impact force-based kind of thing. And then honestly, if they can do the basics of gymnastics of technique, shaping, the same hollow shaping drills, handstand, all the basic physical prep and flexibility that you would use in any athlete pain-free, you can start building a program for return to sport. I'm not going to go into like the nitty-gritty of building a sport, but it's based on the quality of bending. It's based on the quantity that you load somebody per day and per week on a acute to workload, chronic workload ratio. And it's based on the goal of the athlete for a meet or for a season or for long term, right? So we build custom programs at Champion based on the baseball research about how many throws, how far, how much force, to gymnastics about, back walkovers are way more stressful than back handsprings, right? Cap swings are probably not as stressful as tumbling on the floor. So we slowly increase the force objectively with time, duration, volume, intensity. But they should be pain-free as a human first with good flexibility and strength before we have the conversation.
Perfect. Right, I've got 2 questions, one on each that I want to cover. So we're going to start with Joanna. I'm going to come back to yours in just 1 sec. So please stay on. Let's go to this one. I know you've already covered it, but I just want to make sure that she's got clarity. Oh, okay, sorry, go back. Down.
That one?
No. Right, this one. So Jennifer, how do you feel about using weight training for very young 6 to 8 year olds doing pre-competitive? Right. So I know we've touched on it being pubescent gymnasts that we talked about. The first thing you've got to consider here is, like, and this is my perspective, I'm sure you're going to echo it. I would never feel there's a need to do external load with a kid that young.
I agree.
Because they just do not have the baseline level of fitness, strength, or mentality to be able to, like, there's so many other ways of challenging that movement which are going to benefit them than loading them with external resistance. Okay, so and this is real advice here, don't load kids that young. Like and I know we just talked about, the right load, the right time, etc. But with a 6-year-old, it's just a no.
Yeah, I think that
you just don't need to.
It's unrealistic to think they have the mental capacity to do a proper technical squat or a proper technical. And I think that, like you said, in the lower level, the kids for 5 and 6, they're not. They don't need a lot to be challenged. No, they just need to focus on. And
if you're going to challenge anything, it should be capacity.
Yeah.
So I see this a lot. I still see this at international level. A lot of my work, of course, is with federations. I see kids wearing ankle weights at 7 years old because the coach will see them do the movement and say, right, I need them to. It's too easy for them, and so let's put ankle weights on. You don't need to add ankle weights. Change the capacity, change the speed or velocity of the movement. Maybe challenge the height that they're jumping. Loading is only going to cause problems at those joints, particularly that young. So I just wanted to be really clear on that message here. There's smarter ways of challenging a movement than using external load with kids that young. Okay?
Just nail the basics.
Nail the basics, and don't panic about anything else. Right, guys, don't forget, please add your questions in. We've got a little bit longer.
A little bit.
Yeah, we've got a little bit longer.
10 minutes.
10 minutes or so. But thank you very much for all the questions that are coming in. I said I was going to come back to Joanna, which we are here. You talked about lower backs there. Joanna said she's got a couple of gymnasts quite sore in the lower back after training giants, despite having good overall preparation, strong core, and good shaping, etc. She says, she's basically just curious. Is it a shoulder thing? Can you explain the mechanisms that might cause this?
Yeah, so she says with metal bars and strap bar.
Training giants on metal bar, yes. So I'm assuming they're.
Yeah, so, and I think
how young they are.
I have shifted my point of view on this quite a bit. I think that more on the mechanisms and why it's happening. I think that due to the nature of gymnastics, I think that people are to some degree inevitably going to have lower back soreness that comes over time. It's a natural part of just doing a lot of hyperextension. Baseball players might get sore in their elbows. Runners may get sore in their Achilles, stuff like that. So I think that the most important thing to remember is that you are hyper aware and you're hyper vigilant about these issues starting. Yeah, right? That's definitely number one. I think that if you are aware and know and have appropriate things to do instead, to maybe go back a step like your pyramid and kind of work back down a little bit, I think that those are by far the most important. It's probably not one thing that's causing it, right? It's probably not like some special shoulder flexibility exercise you need to be doing. There's probably not like one strength exercise you're missing. I think it's just the nature of gymnastics being so demanding is prone to make people sore. Our gymnasts get soreness in their lower back and their wrists over time. They're growing at rapid rates. They're doing hard skills. It's a lot of force. Like it's gonna probably inevitably happen in some degree, shape, or form. I think that the secondary part to this is that you always have to consider the number of repetitions and the number of overall cumulative training volume that is happening in that movement pattern, right? So I think this happens when you see athletes who start to get older. They move up in levels and they do Yurchenko style vaults, they do back handspring on beam, they tumble on floor, maybe they learn a shapash, right? All these things are hyperextension, right? For male gymnasts, they do a lot of ring work, pommel horse work. They do a ton of upper bar, P-bar skills. They're tumbling on floor. They're tumbling on vault, like wrist. So I think that we underappreciate
hot spots.
Yeah, right.
Red flags.
Yep. And I think we underappreciate the training cumulatively over a week. So they might be so on meta bar because of a couple of days ago they had a whole bunch of beam series, they had a whole bunch of tumbling that.
Yeah, maybe in the schedule they're on bars after they're on an extension like B. Maybe doing lots of bends.
Rotating those events and counting the numbers a little bit is very, very helpful. Probably more than a shoulder exercise or a strength thing you're not doing.
Very, very cool. Do you mind if I do one more over here?
Far away.
We've got Paddy Kelly, who said, what is the best way to increase the volume of training for gymnasts, getting to the point where they can train twice a day, multiple times a week, to avoid injury from doing too many hours too soon? You've kind of alluded to it there by saying too many hours too soon. I think any changes that are going to be happening in volume or intensity or load need to be happening gradually. And that goes for increases and decreases as well. So if one of the biggest contributing factors to injury, of course, is change of load, isn't it? And that happens, spikes and load. There you go. That happens a lot when you're pre-competition and you're suddenly transferring from soft surfaces over to firm surfaces.
Or you're panicking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or your kid can't do routines. They can't get through routine from start to finish. So actually, you prescribe more routines because you're panicking, like you just said. So I think you've got to do it gradually. That's the first thing, which is absolutely important. The second thing is recovery. So if you're increasing training, are you then balancing that out with sufficient recovery to kind of outweigh what you're doing in the gym? That could be making sure that you've got long blocks of recovery. It could be that you're improving your recovery methods. Maybe you were using foam rollers before, but you need to be thinking about cold water immersion or heat or something like that.
And I'll add in that I think most people are doing the smaller 1 to 5% recovery things before the basics.
Right.
Sleep, nutrition, hydration.
Yeah. So getting that absolutely right.
Nail that first.
Because when you do twice a day training, if you think about where that's going to fit on the schedule, you will significantly reduce the period of time between the second session on one day and then the first session the next day. That athlete might have been used to maybe 20 hours of recovery time, and you might be shortening that down by 50%. And that's quite a significant impact, particularly if you're doing that multiple times throughout the week. So I think gradual changes is number one. 2, recovery. And 3, having not necessarily just the experience, but having the eye to know what your athlete can actually tolerate, listening to their body, communication, transparency. Are they robust enough physically to do the technical work? Because they've got to be physically better than they are technically. Their physical competency should exceed their technical competency. If you've got that the other way around, they're going to be prone to injury. It doesn't matter if you're doing 5 hours, 50 hours. Does anyone do 50 hours? I don't think so, but you know what I mean.
It's aggressive.
Okay, it's aggressive. I'm sure somewhere in the world it's been done once before at least. Great question though. I hope that helps. So we're not wrapping up just yet. We've probably got
one more.
We've got 2 more questions. While Dave's looking for a question, I want to mention GymCon again. Okay, the reason I want to mention it again is because I know the value it's going to offer. A lot of these questions are related to the topics that we're going to be talking about on the day, but we're going to be delving in definitely a lot deeper. Dave's going to be joining me on stage at GymCon, which is held June 24th in Birmingham. It's very close to Birmingham Airport, which means that you're able to travel in internationally. It's one of the reasons why we've got people from 11 or 12 different countries coming in. So I've pinned the post, the link to gymcon.co.uk. Make sure you check that out. What are you doing?
Pin the post over here.
Over here. Make sure you check that out, gymcon.co.uk. If you haven't already bought a ticket, take a look.
Okay, 2 more questions. I got 2 more, and then we got to scoop.
Why don't we have one each? Sharing's caring.
Sure, let's go one each, and then we got to go to practice. Okay, so we'll do.
You can have 2. It's fine.
Any suggestions for prevention or treatment, I guess, of heel pain when running/jumping, like severs? It seems to be pretty common in the sport. So what are we doing wrong? So this is the answer to this summarizes a lot of what we talked about so far, and I think echoes off what we just talked about in the question. By the time a gymnast is limping and has such severe heel pain that they can't walk or run or jump or tumble, it's too far gone. Right? We have inflamed the growth plate. That's the calcaneal growth plate is usually what is affected in severs. We have either through a variety of reasons of spiking the training volume, of not having enough rest between sessions, not physically preparing them enough through conditioning, to handle running volume or high forces. All of those things have accumulated to a sore growth plate. So everybody, is okay to admit that like maybe it just went a little bit too far. It pops all the time. But the best thing you can do to prevent it, one, is be intelligent about the rotating the events on soft or hard surfaces, right? Slowly ramping up your training volume of hard surface landings or how many running, sprinting drills you're doing. I see a lot of kids who don't get severances until they get the summer weather comes along and they get nice and run outside, right? Maybe there's a better way on a circuit type conditioning approach to get them metabolically ready that doesn't involve running, right? Or plyometrics too early in the season, things like that. So I think that you have to take a bigger step back and be like, right now, let's treat it with medical care. Let's treat it with, some rest from impact surfaces, some soft tissue work, some accelerated modalities, maybe some strength, some progressive strength exercises. Like that stuff can help in the short term. However, if you just say my pain's gone, let's try to run, and I have a couple athletes who are dealing with this now, it's just too aggressive of a ramp in volume. I think a lot of the kids that I work with for severs get a very general plyometric impact program before they're allowed to do gymnastics, so like pogo hops in place and light shuffle steps and agility ladders and jumping on 2 feet on a softer surfaces for a couple of days, and they just dose that slowly. Then you go through that phase of plyometrics until you can handle force in gymnastics. So, take a bigger step back and look at the spikes and workload ratios and all that stuff, but in the short term, work with a medical provider who can kind of dose that a little bit. And then just, like you said, transparency, communication, listen to the athlete. A little bit of soreness is okay. Like I have athletes who push through a little bit of soreness, especially if it's a tendinopathy, but you have to respect the signs and symptoms at starting.
Yep. Let's go with your second one.
Second one. Built off the question we just had about volume and loading. Do you have any advice for PTs on how to communicate with coaches about controlling and adjusting volume when needed? Tough one. So I think that you have to admit that some people maybe don't want to listen to what you have to say. That's an unfortunate reality of all human nature, not just gymnastics, that you could be the best scientifically based evidence PT in the world, and some people are just not going to be open to it, which is unfortunate, but that's just reality. I think that the most success I have made with talking with people about fostering an establishment between, relationships between coaches and PTs. So when you talk about performance first, we'd all like people to be aware of injury prevention and not have injuries, but a lot of coaches are looking for performance. As medical providers, want to help them get back in the gym faster. So talk about how like, hey, these, your shoulder pain from your, swinging giant so much is definitely not making you more powerful on floor. It's definitely not letting you get back to the table fast enough for your chain goes. It's definitely going to show up if you ever want to do a shoot over or something like that. So if you frame these questions in the aspect of performance, you can then build it on injury prevention. So then start there and sprinkle your way and start with the most common issues. We have 42 seconds left on Instagram. Instagram, we're going to lose you.
Why? Oh, is there a cap to the time you can have on Instagram?
An hour.
Stingy. An hour? Oh, we're nearly at an hour. This is an amazing discussion.
Instagram.
We've talked about a lot.
Thank you.
Instagram, it's been emotional.
It's been real. Jump on Facebook if you want to hear the last couple questions.
Oh, and they've gone 97 views. Okay. Doop. Thank you for all those that are sending love on this live feed. I have to say, much appreciated. I've got a couple of questions that are going to open up a bit of a can of worms right now. We probably haven't got the time, so it doesn't matter.
We got an hour on the button. We crushed it.
Yeah, this has been a good conversation. Okay. Those of you that are thanking us, it's been a pleasure. Look, our intention here is just to help as much as we can to get the right information out. We, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, whether you're with us or not, we're very much aligned in our message, in our values, and in our vision for where the sport needs to be and where it is now. We'd like to think that using social media, using our email databases, using our powers for good, events, etc., all great platforms to help you guys on the shop floor with your athletes. Now, I've been in personal coaching situations. I've been a national coach to Great Britain. I'm now a consultant to 15 or 16 different national teams. So I've seen all those different facets, and I know what your challenges are. I know how frustrating they are, and this collaboration between myself and Dave will continue for many years, I'm sure. And the intention here is to help you do a better job and to help more athletes get to that stage, which at the end of the day is fulfilling their potential. Happy, healthy, and hungry athletes. Okay, so this final parting word, I've said it a few times already. Please check out GymCon. It's going to epitomize what we've talked about today, producing happy, healthy, and hungry athletes. It's not just myself and Dave that are going to be talking on stage. We've got Olympian Niall Wilson. We've also got Miss Val, who I'm sure you will be very familiar with, who kind of embodies, again, the work that we've been talking about here. So I hope this hour has been useful for you. We've certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm going to be with Dave now in the gym. He's got some athletes coming in an hour for a few hours.
I just want this emoji. Thank you.
I'm battling jet lag, so it's going to be some caffeine.
It's going to make it.
Yeah, might catch me sleeping in the foam pit, but
crisps.
There we go. We're gonna try our best to stay awake. Tomorrow I'm meeting Tony Retrosi in the morning because he lives in Boston, so I've not met Tony, but we've again connected on social media, so I'm gonna meet up with Tony. Back over to your physical therapy place. I've not seen that yet.
Seeing the trenches tomorrow.
Champions, so we're gonna go look at that. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
You struggle with that one.
Yeah, I've struggled with that one. We've got dinner with someone pretty well known. I'll keep that under wraps. And then it's not Dave Tilley. And then we're probably going to hit some. We're going to go somewhere and get some cheesecake after.
Yeah. Cheesecake.
Anyway, keep track of the page. There's going to be loads of content this week. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your comments.
And questions.
Catch up with you soon. Thank you.